Auto world for pretty much my entire life. My dad is an auto mechanic. I grew up around it. And before I took this job about a year and a half ago, I was a finance manager here in town for the Rochester Motor Cars Group for about finance manager. So you buy a car, do your paperwork for about a decade. So I've done this a couple thousand times. In terms of my voice is really sore right now because I had a very fun weekend with some buddies watching sporting events. So there was a lot of yelling and screaming. So bear with me on that. Yeah, so basically kind of today's goal is just kind of give you the high level overview. Of course, if you have questions, please ask. We are live streaming this, so I'm sure we'll get some questions from the chat. And I will be more than happy to answer anything. Even afterwards, if you have questions, I'll hang around for a bit. Let me know, all right? But yeah, we're just gonna kind of go through the vehicle purchase process, how that looks, what questions to ask, kind of how vehicles are valued, stuff like that. So we'll go relatively quick, but we can slow it down on certain parts that I feel are most important or the ones that I get asked about the most. So, the vehicle purchase process. The most important thing before we get into financing, before we do anything, is figuring out what the heck you want to drive. And this is something that I feel like a lot of people put on the back foot. They try to figure out, obviously, budget is important, yeah, what not. But actually figuring out and going and testing and driving vehicles is how you, well, fall in love with one, right? The worst thing that you can possibly do is buy a vehicle that you don't love, right? Because there's that one little thing in it that'll just annoy you every single time you get in, right? And so, yeah, so we're gonna kind of give you some options and teach you how to narrow down your search, how to research it, the secure your financing, obviously that's where FQ comes in, and select the best vehicle, verify value, how to research vehicle histories, and then of course what that purchase process looks like. Now, that being said, just to kind of start it off, base your decisions on fact rather than emotion. Now, this is not how I buy cars, so don't listen to my personal advice on this. Do as I say, not as I do type of thing. Base your, like, what do you actually need, right? Do you need an SUV? Do you need a truck? Do you need a van? What are you gonna be using it for on a day-to-day basis? Stuff like that, right? Obviously, it needs to fit your needs as well as the budget, but the needs is trying to figure out, like I said, okay, what type of car are you looking for? When I was in the dealers, I had plenty of times where someone would come in looking for a truck and leave in a sedan because that fit their needs a little bit better. They just wanted to have a truck. It's like, well, that doesn't fit what you're trying to do. It doesn't fit your budget, this, that, or the other thing. So just kind of narrowing it down. Emotion is a big one. For me, as I kind of told you guys, I'm a sports car guy. So in the past probably 10 years, I've probably owned 12 vehicles. I'm terrible about it, but it is what it is. It's fun for me and I'm okay with that. My wife, who couldn't care less about vehicles, this is the process that we followed for that. What is she using it for daily? We ended up with an SUV for her. So now there are 3 types of vehicles that you can purchase on the market. There are new vehicles, there are used vehicles, and there's one in between. And I like to call this one the certified used vehicles. I don't know if any of you have heard that term before or whatnot. But new vehicles are, well, they're exactly it. They're new. You don't need to worry about the vehicle history. All of them come with factory warranties that vary depending on the manufacturer. This phrase here, the drive-off instant depreciation, it's kind of been a weird one lately because they are not depreciating like they used to, just because of supply and demand. New cars are actually holding their value quite well compared to a couple of years old vehicles, which feels weird from a finance standpoint. 3 years ago, it was one of those things where if you could buy new, it was worth it because used ones were more expensive than the new ones because that's just how the market was with COVID and whatnot. But they also have the best interest rates and or rebates. Okay, and the reason this is interest rates are always dependent on the risk of the vehicle loan, right? The number one reason people miss payments is because they're fixing their cars, right? Well, if the car comes with a factory warranty and it has 2 miles on it, the risk is pretty low, which is why you get the best interest rates the newer the vehicles are, okay? Used vehicles, often less expensive. Yeah, question?
Yeah, the one bullet item I don't see up there is insurance.
Yes.
Certain vehicles cost more to insure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'll give you a perfect example of this. Right now I am driving a Subaru sports car. Statistically, it is the most ticketed car in the United States.
Ticketed?
Ticketed. It gets the most tickets, which sucks for me because my perfect driving record doesn't matter.
You have male in an age group that
Correct.
need for speed.
You got it. So my insurance premium is huge, even though I'm driving an 8-year-old car, right? But my wife's car is pretty much brand new at this point. She pays a third of what I pay for the same coverage, essentially. And so yes, insurance-wise, typically the newer the car, the lower the insurance. Obviously value plays into that, but a lot of these newer cars have a bunch more safety features as well, which insurance companies love. But yes, used cars, typically less expensive. The used car market, thankfully, is kind of starting to settle down a little bit. That being said, there's less drive-off depreciation, right? Because typically you're the second, third, fourth owner. And so someone has already taken that hit for you. Now, the downside of buying a used car is you don't know how the person before you has treated it, right? They could have been oil changes every 2,000 to 3,000 miles, or oil changes every 15,000 miles. You don't know, right? And later on, we'll kind of go through and talk about how you can kind of figure that stuff out, right? Now, like I said, the one that is not in here is the certified used. Certified used are sold directly by dealers. You will not find these on like Facebook Marketplace or anything like that. So for example, I'm going to use Ford in a lot of this because that was the last dealership that I worked at. Ford, for example, will sell Ford certified used vehicles. And these are vehicles that go through a different inspection process, one that is typically at or above the dealer's, what's the verbiage I'm looking for here? That's the one, yes, standard. So basically they just get a better inspection, they get better certification, and typically they come with additional warranty coverage, both on the powertrain and the bumper to bumper. And usually they come, they are a little bit more expensive because the dealership is paying the manufacturer for that certification, right? So those are the best used cars. So in terms of like quality, you have new cars, certified used, used. All right, any questions on that? Cool. All right. Estimate payments, set your budget, right? So obviously once you kind of figure out, okay, I'm looking for an SUV, I'm looking for a truck, I'm looking for a car, whatever it may be, you obviously got to figure out, okay, how much can I afford? All right, now the beautiful thing is on the MEFQ website, or Mayo Employees Federal Credit Union website, we do have things like loan calculators built in right there, right? So if you're like, hey, you know what does $20,000 look like over 5 years? It'll do that math and it'll come out to about $400 a month. Right? So payments need to be something that you are comfortable with. So don't set yourself a maximum, okay? Because you will always go over it, all right? Every single time. So set yourself something that you are very, very comfortable with, because inevitably it will probably go up a little bit from there based off of, oh, I really like this car, or I want this additional feature, stuff like that, okay? Like I said, we have that online loan calculator. It is vastly underused. I send it in links on all of our pre-approvals just to say, hey, look, that way they're not asking me a million questions when they can just play around with it themselves, right? So yeah, and kind of base everything on what that monthly payment's gonna be, just because that monthly payment is what's coming out of your bank account each month, right? So that's what you see, that's what you feel. So that initial value may be more than you like, but if that monthly payment fits, who cares, right? That monthly payment is what you see, okay? Now, that being said, researching your top choices. Now, everyone and their mother will have an opinion on what is the best car out there. Obviously, we talked briefly about the old Toyota V8s. Right now, the nice thing is it's pretty hard to buy a bad car, because standards have gotten so much better across the board. for both safety and reliability. Now, there are some great places that you can go to. Obviously, most of them are online nowadays. To just do some more research. So this is things like AutoTrader, TrueCar.com, Consumer Reports, Auto Tempest, that type of stuff. And even a simple Google search will answer most of your questions that you'll have. And then of course the manufacturer websites themselves, right? Even if it's an older vehicle, you can still go to Ford's website and look up 2015 Ford F-150 and see all the different specs that they have, reviews, stuff like that. Okay, so don't be afraid to just go right on the manufacturer's website as well. But yeah, that's kind of the thing, is just make sure to do some homework before you actually go and like fully commit to just doing that one car, okay? That being said, what is available in your price range, right? How do I actually search for a vehicle? Where do I get one, right? Obviously you have the dealerships that are there. They all list their inventory online nowadays, which is awesome. Pretty much all of them will include the pricing of that vehicle. Unless it is a either very expensive vehicle or a very niche vehicle. So like high-end sports cars, they might say, call for price, because they don't want to put 120 grand, right? So other ways that you can look are private parties, excuse me. So private parties are going to be, you know, Joe down the street is selling his truck. Where does he list that? Craigslist.com, Facebook Marketplace is a great spot. This one here, though, is the biggest one. Hitting the actual car lots, right? Sunday's a beautiful day to do this, right? Dealerships are always closed on Sunday, so if you don't want to even have any pressure whatsoever, just go drive around a car lot on Sunday, because they're not going to be open. It is actually illegal in the state of Minnesota to sell a car on Sunday. Cool fact. That being said, if you do go during the week or whatnot, it's okay to tell the salesperson you're just there looking, right? Obviously, they hear that all day, and they will try to say, okay, what can I help you with? Because that's their job. That's what they get paid to do, right? They're paid to sell cars, right? So don't get mad at them. They're just trying to do their jobs. But that being said, use those people, right? Those salespeople, a lot of them are very, very knowledgeable about what they do. And if you have a question, they're more than likely to answer it for you pretty quickly, all right? But yeah, that'll kind of give you a good idea of, okay, where am I going to be pricing at based off of the, you know, the calculations that I've done before of where my monthly payment's going to be. The easiest, just kind of quick math tool that I like to tell people is every 10,000 bucks is about 200 bucks a month, ish, right?
Every 10,000 bucks?
Mm-hmm. Every $10,000 that you finance is about 200 bucks a month.
For how many
Ish.
year loan?
5 years. So if you're just looking for quick math on stuff, that's a good way that I always like to do it, right? So if you're financing 20 grand, 400 bucks, easy peasy. And then obviously the math would tell you that every 1,000 after that is about $20 a month difference, right? So that being said, securing your financing. There are advantages, obviously, to applying for a loan before you visit the dealer. You don't have someone like myself saying, perfect, let me handle your financing for you, et cetera, et cetera. It just kind of allows you to not think about that, right? So for example, if you go ahead and apply online for one of our loans here, that approval is good for 90 days. And so you can shop within that amount of time, knowing that you basically have the money to shop for a car, right? Obviously, at that point, with you guys doing applications, whatnot, a loan officer will typically reach out to you and say, perfect, what can I help with? Is there something, what vehicles are you looking at? These are the rates, these are the terms. And it just kind of removes that aspect when you, of like worry and kind of, well, I'll be honest, dread that a lot of people have when going to dealerships, because it's a high pressure environment, right? It's a high pressure environment. You don't do it very often, right? I mean, most people buy a car once every 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And so it's a very unfamiliar space, which can cause a lot of stress, right? Getting the money part taken care of first eliminates a lot of that, right? That being said, dealerships can do financing, right? I did that for a decade. So when you go through that and you go through dealers, a lot of the times what we've been seeing is manufacturers will have promotional rates. So of course, I'm sure everyone has seen a commercial for 0% financing for X amount of months, this, that, or the other thing. And again, using Ford again, let's just say there's an F-150 out there. That is Ford, not the dealer, Ford saying, if you finance with Ford, we will give you 0% for X amount of time, okay? If that is there, great, do it. Free money's free money, right? You're not gonna be paying any interest on it, but typically those are promotional financing pieces. A lot of the times with those promotional financing deals, it's either you get the rebates or you get the promotional financing. So sometimes it'll be, hey, we'll give you $4,000 off the vehicle, or you can have 0%. And at that point, it's just calculating how much the interest is gonna cost you over the course of whatever your term length is. Most of the time, rebates are the better shot and just pay the interest on the loan. That being said, you also have to ask yourself, and this is the one that I always ask myself, how long are you actually gonna keep this thing before trading it in or getting rid of it, right? For me, it's 3 years, max, right? For my wife, we had her old one for 10, right? So it's one of those things where you just need to be real with yourself. Be like, okay, how long am I actually gonna keep this? What are my patterns? And if you really like it, are you not even gonna trade it in and just get something different, right? So you gotta figure out and just be honest with yourself, how long are you actually gonna keep this? That being said, every once in a while, a dealer may be able to offer you a better rate than we do. Thankfully, that is not the case right now. Usually we are very, very competitive in this market. But sometimes the dealer can beat us. Money's money. You do you. If you want to use us for the convenience, great, we're here for you. If that means paying a little bit more, that's a decision that, again, you as a person need to make. But if it's all about the money for you and you're like, you know what, I want the best rate I possibly can get, sometimes that's not us, and that's okay, all right? But I'm gonna say about 90% of the time that is us. So that being said, that's kind of the financing. Now, once you've kind of picked a car out-ish of what you want, once you've figured out your financing, this is the fun part. Go and drive them, right? Go sit in them, touch them, feel them, take them on a test drive. I always recommend take a friend, right? Take someone with you that you know you can trust, and someone that will basically check you, right? If you're getting too excited about it, have someone there that's just like, hey, you know what? Let's take a step, right? Take a step back. Again, facts over emotion, right? But that being said, like we talked about before, it's okay to tell the salesperson you're only there for test driving, right? Now, that being said, if you go back and you buy that car, go talk to that salesperson, right? If they've answered your question, they've done the work to kind of to guide you in a direction that works, great, go back to them. Most of them are on commission or at least get paid based off the number of cars that they sell, right? So if they were good to you, be good to them back, okay? But yeah, take their card, ask them questions. All they do all day is sit around and talk about cars. I know this because I've been there, right? I've done that, I've seen that. So yeah, use them as a resource. That being said, oh God, this talking's killing me. All right, that being said, the dealer will obviously have a price for a vehicle, okay? The big question is that vehicle worth that price? How do you figure that out, right? Obviously, you've heard Kelley Blue Book, you've heard of those type of valuation systems that dealers and us use to make sure that you're not overpaying for that vehicle. So I'm gonna use big numbers and easy math for this. Question?
What did Ford, as you working there, you got all these people coming in, and they're all choosing their own sites to get these numbers.
Yeah.
What did you guys use as your base?
There's a bunch of them. These are the two biggies. NADA, which is now JD Power. I don't know if you've ever heard of any of those. Kelley Blue Book's a good one. Black Book is a good one that we use here. But a lot of them nowadays there's 5 or 6 that everyone uses. We use 2 here at MEFQ. At the dealers, yeah, we had 5 or 6. We had access to average auction prices. We had access to Kelley Blue Book, NADA, this, that, or the other thing. let's say you're looking at an F-150 XLT, how many of those are in the area and what are they selling for? So there's a ton of data that is out there for that, some of which that's how they determine their pricing. Now, the beautiful part about dealers nowadays is a lot of them have moved to a one price strategy. Okay, so they're not negotiating on vehicles anymore. Now, this is, in my opinion, a good thing, mainly because the internet has leveled the playing field, right? If you want to go to and shop for an F-150, you can type in F-150 on Google and 3,000 of them will show up there for that you want to buy. Obviously, their price needs to be good in order for you to look at it, right? Because they know that you can just go down the street and find another one. So that's why a lot of them have moved to that pricing strategy, because it's just easier for them. They need to be competitive in the price area in order to sell cars. And if they're not, they're going to lower the price, right? So that, again, is also what helps determine a value for a vehicle. So back to kind of okay, what determines a value? Let's say you're going to go and buy a brand new Corvette, okay? Easy math, let's just say it's worth $100,000, okay? If the dealership has that priced at $120,000, you can certainly buy it for $120,000. That's fine. We're not going to let you finance $120,000 though, because it's not worth that. So typically we'll let you finance that up to a certain percentage, right? And that percentage is kind of dependent on the vehicle and what you're buying, right? So if you wanted to buy that and finance that, you're probably going to need a down payment or a trade-in to get that number down to what the vehicle is actually worth. Now, the other way, let's say they have that for 80 grand and it's worth 100. Great, shut up and take my money at that point, right? Because the vehicle is priced properly. And when you do a vehicle loan or an application through us, send us the VIN numbers, right? We have these tools available, and a lot of the tools are available online as well. But we'll tell you, hey, no, this is priced really well. You're probably paying a bit too much. Or hey, if you want to do this one, you're going to need a down payment. That's what we as loan officers are here for, right? We're here to kind of help you get through the entire process. So if you have questions or you're worried about the value, let us know, right? But again, a lot of them will actually have that built into the website as well for most dealers. Now the tricky part is dealers make it easy on you, right? Because their goal is to sell you the car, right? When you're shopping private party, you got to do that all by yourself, right? And that's where these tools and resources come in, okay? So if you're shopping for Joe's truck, the neighbor down the street, what is he asking for it? Is it fair? Go to one of these websites, type in the VIN number of the vehicle, you'll most likely get a value. And then you can see if he's close or not. Next is the vehicle history. Now, many dealerships will provide this at no cost. Some of them have them directly on their website. If you go to the vehicle, you can click, check auto report, and it'll pop up right there. This is also something that you can typically pay $5 to $10 to get online for a vehicle. But the big ones are Carfax and AutoCheck. These essentially give the entire reported vehicle history. And what I mean by reported is that, let's say I do my own oil changes. I'm not going to call Carfax and say, hey, I did an oil change in my car. I'm not going to do that. But when a dealer does an oil change, or like a Jiffy Lube or whatever does an oil change, they always report that. So let's say you're buying a vehicle from Ford. You go to the vehicle history and it's been serviced there its entire life. You'll see the intervals in which the vehicle has been serviced, what has been done. And it's nice because you can kind of see that history, see how that vehicle, or at least get an insight into how that vehicle has been treated in its past life, right? That being said, it's tricky when it comes to private party because you don't have those resources. That's where these websites can come in. It'll also give you previous owner information. So for example, a lot of dealers buy their used inventory from auctions, right? So when we were at Ford, we bought a lot of vehicles from Michigan because that's where a lot of the auctions were from. So all the vehicle history reports said purchase in Lansing or Ann Arbor, this, that, or the other thing. And then it'll show the purchase process over to Minnesota, right? So again, it just kind of gives you that insight into how the vehicle was treated in its past. That being said, it will also tell you if something major has happened. So if the vehicle was in a flood, if it was in an accident, if it was reported odometer problems is thankfully an uncommon one nowadays. If it was used as a rental vehicle, stuff like that, it'll give you all that information, okay? So if you don't know the history, or the employee doesn't know, or the owner doesn't know, ask. If not, you can always use one of these resources to help you get that, okay? Things to consider: a car without a history is a car that hasn't been serviced. Yes, you can say that, and that's probably pretty accurate. And so if you are looking at a vehicle at a dealership and they don't have that report, or they do have the report but nothing's on it, make your own judgments, right? But if there's no history, there's no history, okay? And then the other issue is salvage titles. So salvage titles, this is one that comes up a lot, especially after like natural disasters like hurricanes and stuff like that. A salvage vehicle is a vehicle that has essentially been totaled out by an insurance company, okay? But someone or a company bought that vehicle as a totaled unit, fixed it up, passed all the safety checks, and the state has given it a title, but it is a branded title, okay? Now this affects things like value. If you had a Corvette, brand new, salvage title, which one is everyone gonna buy? The brand new one, right? Because it hasn't been in an accident or hasn't been flooded. So the value is obviously different, right? Typically salvage vehicles are gonna be worth, this says 30%, it's probably more like 50%. Less, just because it's gone through that. Now, does that mean it's a bad car? No. My first car was a salvage vehicle. I actually kept that thing longer than most other cars that I had because it worked well, right? But we do finance them, but the big thing is you have to make sure that your insurance company will provide you coverage on that, okay? Because a lot of the times insurance companies will not insure salvage vehicles. It's just not worth it for them, right? And then, of course, if you want, always have the vehicle inspected by a licensed mechanic. Now, the dealers obviously do it themselves, but if you want, you have your own guy that you use, or own company that you use, most places will let you take it there, no problem to have it looked at. Obviously, you'd have to pay for that out of your own pocket, but if you're seriously considering spending 20 grand on a vehicle, what's 200 bucks to get it looked at, right? So again, just kind of do your due diligence, make sure you're being smart about it, okay? Make your purchase. This one, plan your time accordingly. If you are going to a dealer, minimum 2 hours.
Why?
Because it will always take longer, okay? Even if you were like, there are very few times, I mean, obviously I worked there, and even when I bought vehicles, it took a little bit, right? Because did you tell your salesperson that you were coming to pick up the car? No? Okay, cool. Now they got to scramble to get it. They got to send it to the cleanup. They got to make sure everything's all good. They got to fill it up with gas. Okay, well, if you as a person were doing that, that's a half hour right there. And you haven't even seen, touched, feel the car yet, right? Also, it takes time to do paperwork, right? You are making a large purchase. There is legal documents. There is titling, registration, making sure that the purchase contract is in order, right? Again, that takes time. And now a lot of people go to dealerships on Saturdays. Is there a line? Is there someone in front of you buying a car and you gotta wait, right? That'll happen. So anytime you go to a dealership to actually purchase a vehicle, 2 hours minimum is what I always tell people. If it's shorter, great. But just keep your expectations in check, right? And again, it's one of those things where if you have or built that rapport with a salesperson, or you have that person's card and you're like, hey, you know what, I think I am gonna buy this one, call them ahead of time. Just say, hey, I think I'm gonna come buy this car. I wanna make sure that you have it ready when I get there. And that'll cut off a half hour at a time. And also too, once you're done with the purchase, they're gonna wanna teach you how to use the thing, right? They don't just wanna say, okay, bye. And then now you're all of a sudden there with a screen that you've never seen before, right? Typically, they'll take time to teach you how to use the vehicle, what are the features, and just kind of get it set up for you. We do call that the vehicle delivery, right? But that being said, be clear on your expectations with price. Be ready to provide the documentation for stuff. Obviously, bring your IDs, bring this, bring that, right? Because it is a purchase. That being said, we talked about the non-negotiation pricing for dealers. The one place that you can still negotiate on is your trade-in, right? If you are trading in a vehicle and they say, hey, we'll give you 5 grand for it, and you're like, how about 7? They can play around with that number, because again, there's no real quote unquote value set for that. Now, if you have the documentation and you've said, no, I've gone to this place, this place, this place, they say it should be worth this, great. They're probably going to give you that for it, because if they want, if your vehicle is quality and it's a good vehicle and that they can resell it, they're going to want it, right? Now, that being said, don't expect them to pay retail pricing for it, because they're not gonna. They're in the business of making money, right? So if the retail price is 10 grand and they offer you 8, you're probably pretty close, right? Because they got to have some in it for them. Because the big thing is, when we are in the dealer, obviously we have all the data in the world available to us. The average reconditioning price of a used car was $3,000, okay? Tires, brakes, rotors, any weird headlights, right? Because there's this beautiful thing when you work in the dealership called liability, right? If I'm gonna resell a car, it's gotta be pretty much perfect, okay? Because you're not gonna buy a car with a busted headlamp, or you're not gonna buy a car that has older brakes in it. Now, obviously, that being said, if the brakes meet a certain point, they're not gonna fix them, right? Because a used car is a used car. It's not brand new. If you want a brand new car, pay for a brand new car price, right? But they have to have that wiggle room. But if you come in there and you say, hey, this, and this says it should be worth this, they're probably gonna give you that, right? Because they know you've done that research, okay? So that is the one place that you can still kind of negotiate price-wise on vehicles, okay? That being said, this is my favorite part of the whole thing. Additional coverage through the dealer. Extended warranties, right? Now, I will preface this entire conversation with, I am biased, right? All I got to deal with in the dealership was the bad stuff. I didn't get to see the person that came in there, did an oil change once every 6 months and left. Those were not who I had the pleasure of working with when this conversation typically did come up. It was, hey, I have a $7,000 bill in the parts department. What do? You pay it, right? Because again, I have a little bit of bias towards it. Extended warranties. So just to kind of give you an overall of what is it, okay? Typically, most vehicles will come with 3 years, 36,000 miles of bumper-to-bumper coverage, okay? Bumper-to-bumper coverage means everything between the bumpers, not the actual bumpers. So if a touchscreen goes out, backup camera, any like electronic buttons, engine, transmission, stuff like that, that warranty will pay for that, okay? Typically with a deductible, $100, $200, whatever it is. An extended warranty takes that coverage and pushes it out for your ownership term, okay? And that is a paid thing. They're not gonna give you that for free, okay? Typically, they're gonna be anywhere from $2,500 to some older BMWs, 6 grand, 7 grand, 8 grand, right? Depending on the vehicle that you're looking at, okay? And again, it's entirely just a peace of mind piece, right? For me, I buy them on all of mine because, like I said, I dealt with nothing but the bad stuff. It's just something that I'm willing to pay for just to not have to think about it. I have, my best friend refuses to get them because he's like, you know what? I've never had an issue with it in my entire life. I have money set aside to do that. Great. If that's the way you want to do it, awesome, right? But for me personally, that's not how I want to do it. I would rather pay someone monthly and then have everything be taken care of. Now, that being said, you may say, hey, Cameron, you're wasting your money, this, that, the other thing. It's fine. It's worth it to me, okay? Typically, the most common breaks nowadays are not the engine and transmission, okay? That's why the warranties on them are a little bit longer. They give you 3 years, 36 on all the electronics and this, that, or the other thing, and then most companies will give you 5 years or 60,000 miles on the engine or transmission. And the reason why is because someone that gets paid a heck of a lot more than I do at Ford or whatever company is doing the math. They're saying, at what point is it not worth it for us to cover this vehicle, okay? That 3 year 36 is kind of the sweet spot right now, okay? Because they know after that point, the Ford's not gonna cover it or whatever it may be. So if a touchscreen goes out, that's gonna be an out-of-pocket expense for you. The powertrain will not cover that, right? Those touchscreen displays, they're $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 depending on the vehicle that you're doing, just due to the amount of electronics that are in there, right? I don't want to deal with that, so I buy them. I pay for that, and I'm okay with that. Some people don't, okay? Any questions?
Yeah, as far as like,
Yeah, shoot.
because it is interesting, because there's a big debate online.
There always will be.
And so, I do like you said, because when I used to buy a computer, I wanted to put it in, because all electronic.
Yeah,
So now most cars are more electronic.
100%. Cars are more computers than they are cars nowadays.
So is that extended warranty negotiable as far as the cost?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Dealers make money on that, right? It's a product that they sell. There's a lot of margin in that. You can negotiate with them. If they say no, though,
It's okay.
it's okay. If that's something that you're not willing to pay, great. But if it is something that you're willing to pay and it's a little bit more than you want, tell them what you're willing to pay, right? Now, that again, that's where they make their money. That's, as a finance manager, that's where I made the majority of my money. I got commission on whatever I made on those products, right? So if the product cost was $1,700 and I sold it for $2,700, I would get a cut of that 1,000, right? So yeah, they can be negotiated. Sometimes, so for example, older German vehicles, right? They're notoriously over-engineered, Mercedes, BMW, those type of vehicles. They're expensive to fix, right? They're luxury vehicles. The extended service contracts on those are insanely priced because they are so expensive to fix. So if you want that coverage, you're gonna have to pay for that coverage. A lot of the times on those, we just knew the price was crazy, so we just sold them at cost because it wasn't worth it. If you want to buy it, great, here it is for you, but we're probably not going to make anything because if we did make anything, the price would be so outlandish that it's just not even worth showing you, right? But again, most vehicles, most Japanese vehicles, American vehicles, that price on a new car is probably going to be anywhere between $2,500 and $3,500 for coverage. And typically those can be customized to how much you drive a year, how long you plan on keeping it, stuff like that. Okay. So if you have questions, ask. So
So my second question
Yeah.
is, buying the extended warranty from the manufacturer versus these online.
never do it online. My thing is if you are going to purchase a extended service contract from someone, do it from a dealer here in town, okay? Because they have every reason to say yes to fixing it, okay? Versus if you buy something online, they have every reason to say no, because there's no, like, what do they care? What are you gonna do, call them and yell at them? Like, they don't care, right? With a dealer, if they're going to sell you a product, they want to stand behind that product and fix it, right? So if you are going to purchase one, buy it from a dealer. Buy it from a reputable source, basically. Give them a reason to say yes. Because there have been many times where the dealership has made an exception on fixing something because you were just out of warranty or this, that, or the other thing, because you've had a good track record with them, right? There's that person-to-person relationship there. There's that me as a business wanting to take care of my customers, right? Versus online, you submit a request, they just say no. Okay, on to the next one. Right? And then what was the point of spending $1,700 or saving $500 by buying it online versus buying it in the dealership, right? Doesn't matter if they're not going to cover anything. so yes, always buy it through a dealer if you are going to do an extended warranty. Okay, good question. Any others on this one? Anything online? Nope. Cool. I don't like this one, I'm skipping it. This one, gap coverage or guaranteed asset protection. I'm sure this may be a term that you've heard, maybe. Essentially, if the vehicle is totaled, it will pay off the loan up to a certain amount. So I'm going to go back to using that Corvette, easy big numbers. Let's say you buy a vehicle, you buy that Corvette, it's $100,000. After tax, title, and license, it's $110,000, right? So technically you're upside down on this vehicle, okay? If you take that Corvette and you go super fast and you drive it into a wall and miraculously live, that vehicle is going to be totaled. Insurance is not going to give you what you owe. They're going to give you what the vehicle is worth. So if they give you $100,000, you still owe that $10,000. This is where gap coverage comes in. It pays off, well, basically, the vehicle plus a certain percentage to pay off that loan, okay? So gap coverage is something that both dealers and we offer. Usually it's $4 or $5 a month, nothing crazy. And essentially it's just there to kind of protect you if you're in a kind of, I don't want to say an upside down situation, but if you are in an upside down situation, it is there for you, and it is also there for vehicles that depreciate pretty heavily, okay? But again, it's just there as a safety net.
As a clarifying point, like, when is gap coverage not a good idea?
Yeah. So gap coverage is not a good idea if you have an exceptional amount of equity in a vehicle. So for example, let's say you're gonna buy that Corvette, but you're gonna put 25 grand down. Gap doesn't make sense. You're already in an equity situation. There is no risk. If something happens to that vehicle, you're gonna walk away with a check, right? So equity situations do not require this. This is only if, hey, I'm not putting any money down and it just makes me feel better to make sure everything's paid off, or I'm a little upside down on this car, I wanna make sure that I'm covered, okay? Good question. So yeah, that's kind of the basic high level gap coverage. Obviously we do have it, there are some perks with it. Typically if the vehicle does get totaled out, gap coverage will actually pay your insurance deductible up to $1,000. And if you refinance with us and get gap again, we'll give you an extra little bonus on that one. But that's if you just get it through us. In the year and a half and probably 1,000 loans that I've done through MEFQ, this has never come up. Because most people are in a decent spot right now with their vehicles because vehicles are worth so much right now. It is very rare that we even get to use this. So a little asterisk on that, nothing crazy. That being said, that's kind of the basics, right? So in terms of, okay, I have some information now, what do I do? How do I go about it? If you do want to apply, you just simply go to our main website, mayocreditunion.org. You can apply for a vehicle loan directly there. We can give you that quick pre-approval. And again, that's where we can give you the values on a vehicle. Or if you have a vehicle that you're selling and you want to know the value, give us a call, right? That's why we're here. We're here to help. And also too, what we run into a lot, especially nowadays with interest rates being what they are, let's say you have purchased a vehicle last year and right now our rates are better, great. We can take over that loan and help you get that better interest rate. So even if you're in that situation as well, refinancing, whether it be a truck, RV, loan, or boat, whatever, we're here for you, right? So again, if you have any questions, just kind of call and ask. But before we kind of finish up, what questions do we have? I know we kind of wrapped up pretty quick, but any questions? Nope. Cool. That's all I got. So that's my contact information if you need me. But otherwise, again, if you apply directly online, a loan officer will reach out to you typically within about a day. So that's it. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Yeah.